there's no way some of these younger Gen Z people could weather such a storm without quitting.
The definition of what full-time employment is up for debate. That this young generation seems less capable to deal with stress than previous generations. That is true. And so they're really good at presenting a confidence that they don't have. They sound like they have all the answers when they don't. It raises the question, is that bad? The grass is always greener. You have people who are going from relationship to relationship to relationship, worse from job to job to job to job. And when I was younger, if you didn't like your job or if you didn't like your boss, the bad news was you had to stay there for a year, because if you left in anything less than a year, you would hurt your CV. They'd be like, why did you leave in under a year, And now again, particularly young people, there's no stigma to quitting. And it happens sometimes too quickly. Like if you're confrontation avoidant, and I've seen it happen, confrontation avoidant, I'm too afraid to ask my boss for a raise, so I just quit. I've seen it happen, right? Or I've been here for 4 months. I don't like the culture. I quit, right? Or I got in trouble at work. I hate my boss. I quit. And so people are quitting so much. My fear, I don't mind if something's super toxic. Get the heck out of there. Most places are not super toxic. Imperfect, yes. But toxicity is there's a standard, and it's a high bar. And, or this doesn't fit my values, or this doesn't agree with my politics, I quit. My fear is that if we flash forward 5 years, there's going to be a disproportionately high number of people who have 8 jobs in 5 years. And what's going to happen is an employer is going to look at them and be like, I can't take the risk that you're going to stick around. I'm not hiring you. You sound like an amazing candidate, but you're too high risk for me. And because you've had so many jobs over such a short period of time, you actually haven't stuck around long enough to build up a skill set or know what it's like to manage a storm, because you've stuck around in the good times and bailed in the bad times. And so you have now been in the workforce for 5 years, but you don't have 5 years of work experience. You have 4 months of work experience. And so I don't want you either, because you've never been through a battle, And I see it happening. A young person who's been at a company for 8 months goes to their boss and says, I want a raise, want a significant raise, because I'm doing the same job as those people. Those people have been in the workforce for 10 years. I know, but I'm doing the same work as them and I'm doing good work. That's true. You are doing the same work as them and you are doing good work. The difference is I'm not paying them just because they've obliquely been in the workforce for 10 years. I'm paying them because you know how to hoist a mainsail in calm waters. And you can hoist a mainsail in calm waters as well as they can hoist a mainsail in calm waters. The difference is they also know how to hoist a mainsail in a storm. I don't know if you can hoist a mainsail in a storm. I pay them more because I know that if we run into hard times, I know that they know what to do and I can trust that we can navigate. And I also know that they will teach you how to hoist a mainsail in a storm. It's like the same reason I buy insurance. I don't expect my house to burn down, but I pay just in case. I'm paying them more for a skill set that I hope they never have to use. That's why they get more.
One of my fears at the moment, which is perfectly linked to what you're saying, is I have a fear, and I've never expressed this openly, so this is the first time, so don't all come for me at once. I have a fear that Gen Z are the least resilient generation that I've ever seen. And a lot of it, and sounds so stupid and not evidence-based, but if you look at what TikTok is telling this generation work is, and there was a video that went viral on Twitter the other day out in Silicon Valley where it shows like a Facebook employee, one of the big tech companies. She arrives at work in the morning, she takes a photo of her latte, there's free muffins, she goes over and has the free muffin. It shows her in her TikTok literally doing like 30 seconds of work. Then she's out doing some like pottery making class that work have put on. She comes back to the desk, does another 30 seconds of work. Then she's off to her work social. And I reflect on the storms that my father went through at work. And I just know so deeply inside of me that there's no way some of these younger Gen Z people could weather such a storm without quitting, doing a long LinkedIn post to criticize their employer, then quitting. And I just fear that Gen Z, when I'm hiring people that are in that generation, I almost need to go to an extra length just to check that they can cope with a high intensity culture where demands might come on a Saturday because the world doesn't stop on Saturdays and Sundays. So I wanted to get your take on that.
So let's examine both sides, right? Let's think of what's the balance and what are the costs, right? It is a generation that already was starting to ask these questions, but COVID forced the rest of us to ask these questions too, which is what is the definition of work, right? Like, what does a full-time job mean? And these are unanswered questions. So I don't have an answer as to what the future of work is, because it's right now everything's in flux and things have not landed yet, right? So what is the definition of a full-time job? If I don't come to work, the definition used to be I come in at 8 or 9 and I leave at 5 or 6. That was the full-time job. Now, how much work I did between those hours, it was FaceTime. And we know that because we've all had jobs where we stuck around until 7. So we got FaceTime, so our boss liked us, right? We've all done it, right? But FaceTime is not a thing anymore. And so I have a full-time job and I'm offered another full-time job and I took it. And we see this, like, employees who have productivity issues, and then they say that they're burnt out, and I know how much work you have. You shouldn't be burnt out. Do they have a second job? And why shouldn't they have a second job? Well, we pay them benefits. So what? As long as they're getting their work done, do we care when? People all have side hustles. Even people who've got full-time come to work, everybody's got some sort of little side hustle. So the definition of what full-time employment is up for debate. And I think young people feel, in particular, that why shouldn't I? It's my time. I can do what I want with it. Or I only work 40 hours because those are my limits. Respect my boundaries, right? The problem is I think all of it is so literal, which is, yes, boundaries are important, but the edges of the boundaries are fuzzy, right? And it's not like I don't work on Saturdays. Well, I agree with you. I don't want you working on weekends. This one weekend, I really need your help to finish this project so we can get it out the door. I don't take meetings after 5 o'clock. I agree with you. I think we should have that life balance. But today, I just need you to work till 6 to get this one project done. And to recognize that, so one of the things they're getting right is that we're married to work and we take our phones on holiday. We take our computers on holiday with us, and that work has ultimate say on our time. I agree. That should go the way of the dodo. But the extreme is not to put these hard lines everywhere and say, I don't do this. As an aside, the irony is, they demand that we respect their boundaries, and yet they seem to step on every other boundary about bringing, emotional professionalism at work and dumping all of my problems onto my colleagues, which is emotionally unprofessional. It's like, that's a boundary you can't cross. But there is good evidence to your assertion that this young generation seems less capable to deal with stress than previous generations. That is true. They are good at curating, they've grown up in an Instagram, Facebook, TikTok world where I'm really good at showing you the life I want you to think that I lead. And so they're really good at presenting a confidence that they don't have. They sound like they have all the answers when they don't.
But then I see you presenting that life to me if you're a fellow Gen Z.
Yeah.
And I go, what? My life's stressful and difficult, and I had to work really late, and you're having a frappuccino latte, whatever, at 3 a.m. doing pottery lessons. I need to quit.
Yeah. It raises the question, what do you want from your life and what do you want from your work? Why do you have this job? If it's just to pay the bills, I hope I know that is the case for a lot of people, that I have to have a job to pay the bills. And I hope that employers are good enough that even survival jobs are a nice place to work. Trader Joe's, great company where people who have survival jobs, still a nice place to work, But I think the question is what is the life that you're trying to build? And if you want a job simply to pay your bills, and, this concept of quiet quitting, have you heard this one? Quiet quitting?
I've heard this term, but maybe I heard you talk about it.
Well, it's been written about.
Right.
It's not my concept. But quiet quitting is this thing where I don't quit the job, but I basically will dial back my effort and give you the minimum. So you pay me to do this job, and I will do the basic minimum amount to do the job, where you can't really fire me because I'm not really doing anything badly or wrong, but I'm also not going above and beyond at all, right? So there's this concept of quiet quitting where people are coming to work and they're just doing the minimum, doing their hours, doing their job, not volunteering or raising their hands or going, and that's it. And it raises the question, is that bad? So
one of the struggles of this young generation is they are not equipped on how to deal with stress. They're just less equipped than previous generations for various reasons, including social media, internet, and all and parenting and all the rest of it. There's many reasons for it, but they're really not good at dealing with stress. They're really bad at dealing with confrontation. They're so confrontation avoidant that they would rather ghost someone than break up with them after dating them for 6 months, right? That they would rather quit their job than ask their boss for a raise. And usually in spectacular fashion, like, you don't value me, you don't pay me enough. You're like, if you just asked, I would have given you a raise. We love you. But they quit because they're just afraid of the conversation. So they're very intimidated by confrontation. They're ill-equipped to deal with stress. There's an emotional immaturity, emotional unprofessionalism, right? And it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It just is. And so us having empathy and understanding that is important. And so it raises the question, how are they dealing with their stress? Not well. And so there's a new phenomenon that I'm seeing happening in a lot of offices where, especially young people, are finding the one or two empathetic, the empaths on the team, and they're going to them with all of their problems. And it's not the traditional, I hate my boss, I hate my job. Venting about work is fine. I have no issue with that. But it's, I hate my mom, I don't know what I want to do with my life, when am I going to leave my house, my boyfriend's not working out, my girlfriend's not working out, like every problem in my life on this one or two people at work. And we've had it happen on our team. We had 3 people quit. And I got a little team. I got 3 people who quit because they said they were burnt out. And I was like, I know how much work you do. What do you mean you're burnt out? So I'm like, do you have another job on the side? How can you be burnt out? You know? What I discovered is they were the empaths on the team, and everybody was calling them to unload. They were burnt out because they were taking on everybody's stress, and they were exhausted. They couldn't take it anymore, and they just quit. And when I talked about this publicly, I had a 23-year-old come up to me in one of the companies and said, I do that. And so we have to recognize they are struggling in a changing, chaotic, crazy world right now where there's so much uncertainty in this world. Like the world is always uncertain, but my God, it's war and the countries at each other's throat, and there's challenge and the global warming, and it's just insane, these poor kids. And they have no outlet. They don't know how to deal with it. So it's a challenge for all of us, is how do we hold space for them? And the problem is they don't even recognize when we're doing the right thing for them. That's the hardest part. A lot of anger, but the problem is it's gonna take a bit. Like, we're in a period of extreme flux, and it's not going to settle for a little bit. It's going to be a very bumpy road for the next few years. There's no right answer, and no good deed will go unpunished.